arcades and arcade machines. Although still going in some parts of the world and absolutely my favourite place to go for a chill evening with friends, they are a pretty significant piece of video game history. Large, hulking pieces of hardware that can take even the most heavy-handed of players, with proper maintenance that is. There's nothing quite like revisiting an old fighting game on a machine that it was created for in the first place. You almost feel like you've gone into a time machine or something, and so many of those games are a blast to play, even in 2020. Now, if you've played arcade Mortal Kombat, that would mostly be 1 to 4, you've probably seen one of these before. Now, this is the original sort of stick layout that the original arcade Mortal Kombat games actually had. It's large, it's retro, and it's quite encumbersome, and I like that, and I always have done. The thing is, if you want to take this kind of stick and this kind of arcade game and squeeze it into a smaller, more miniature version, what do? Sometimes, companies release these small little novelty experiences that allow you to play the games a little bit, shall we say, differently. Well, I got my hands on just one of those because I was gifted one as a Christmas present. Who from? How about my mum, who just saw it in a shop somewhere and thought of Mustard and myself. Thanks a lot, Mum, for making this video possible. Love you as always. This version of the game was made by a company called Basic Fun, I think. I haven't been able to find out much about them, to be honest, but it's Mortal Kombat 1, even though it has Ultimate MK3 Scorpion on the side of it. I can only assume it's because the first MK doesn't have those kind of character renders or something. It's got 6 buttons on the front, although it understandably doesn't sport the MK button layout, and there's a stick as well, but as you'd expect, this thing is stiff as anything. But it works, so can't complain. I've got to say before we jump in, this thing is standalone, and it doesn't plug into anything, and it's battery powered. So I had very limited ways to capture it from my end, and the video quality is less than desirable, I suppose, but it's all I've got. This version of the game is understandably not the arcade version, which is what I expected. I think it's the Genesis version. The music and the visuals kind of link up to it, so that's what I'm going to assume, but if anybody knows for sure, please let me know in the comments. Gameplay-wise, it's a Mortal Kombat 1 port. There really isn't much to say about it on an in-depth level, because if you've played or seen 16-bit MK1, then you already know what this is going to look and sound like. The thing is, I never really played the first MK on home systems. I started with Mortal Kombat 3, and when I was younger, I struggled to play the older games on my SNES because they didn't have the run button or the bigger combos. So this feels quite interesting revisiting it all these years later. This game had 13 and up on the box, so I knew there would be some kind of censorship. And I'll admit, I'd never seen the Genesis finishing moves, and was not prepared for just how lame they actually were. I only got a few on camera because some of those finishes felt impossible on this stick. I played Kano for almost a whole arcade run, and I didn't get his heart ripped once. Sorry. Big shadow kick, what the f- The music sounds really bizarre through these tiny speakers, but again, I can't really complain because it seems kind of incredible to me that this thing even exists. But this version's soundtrack really did throw me off. It's quite different to arcade. You can still play this game like you remember. The jump back into jump kick trick works on most difficulty levels. The AI starts move reading a lot of your jumps, which feels tricky later in the tower. But for the most part, it's still just Mortal Kombat 1 on home systems. You can even glitch jab on this thing, which is quite funny to me. I can't imagine playing against a real opponent on this thing, and I'd be worried I'd break it. It's nerve-wracking enough doing Kano's Kano ball with this stick shaking around like it does. You still have test your might after a few games, the endurance rounds, and the boss fights at the end. Ultimately, this is an old school classic, simply placed into a new way of actually playing it with your hands. You end up with an experience that's quite fun for a little mess around, but I can't see myself playing it much longer after this because ultimately I would rather play the slightly more advanced systems. It's hard to beat the arcade version, but for a one-off, I think this does a pretty fun little job. Nice job, guys. I've never owned one of these tiny little machines before, so I thought I'd check it out and share the experience with the rest of you, as like a nice little bonus video, I suppose. This will live with the rest of my MK collection now, and thank you, Mum, for the cool gift. You know me too well. Hope you all stay safe during these difficult times, and I will see you next time. Take care.